Blog Talk Radio.
Correctly with the correct amount. Correctly with the correct amount.
And now for our feature presentation.
And we start with our usual mess up of the intro. Folks, it's Thursday. It's late night. It's the Untitled Movie Show. It's episode 3, and I'm Miguel, your host here on Retro Unlimited on BlogTalkRadio.com. But I'm not alone. I'm not alone this week. I've got the man himself, Mr. Nerd Genius himself, Mr. Michael Burhan.
Hi. How's it going, everybody? You can also add the author himself, Michael Burhan, as well.
Oh, yeah. He's been busy, folks. He's been getting a lot of projects off the ground. He's going places. This kid's going places.
Yeah, going places, but with no money. If anybody wants to donate to the Michael Burhan as Poor Fund, please do. That would help me in all my endeavors, including feeding myself while I depart in these endeavors. But yeah, it's all's going well. Hopefully.
Well, I've been a little bit up and down as of late. I'm sure we've talked about it. I really don't want to go too much into it, but I'm just a little bit burned out on the whole corporate system. I'm not going to go into it too far, but I'm doing better. I'm here. I'm talking about movies. I'm hanging and banging. We're doing what we do. What we do on Thursdays. Tonight's topic.
I have to admit, the Retro Island Network doesn't have a very shrilly corporate system. We're all cool down here. That's what makes this network all exciting, of course, for people like Miguel and myself. We love it, of course, and hope that you guys are enjoying it too.
And speaking of joining us, the chat we're about to open up right now. And folks, if you want to join our chat, we are just opening up right now. If you folks want to call in, the number is 213-943-3434. Tonight's topic is going to be on directors, mostly good directors gone bad. We're going to talk about directors who just don't have it anymore, who maybe used to back in the day, but at this point are just kind of dragging their feet. But before we get into all that, let's take a few minutes and talk about some recent movie news. And the biggest bit of movie news that I want to talk about actually hit within the last 24 hours, and that's rumors of Ben Affleck leaving the Justice League movie and cutting ties with DC.
What?
Yeah, this all stems from the recent news that, let me see if I can pull up this bit. The recent news that the Batman vs. Superman release date is going to be moved from summer 2015 to May 6, 2016. It's going to be pushed a whole year forward to kind of air out some issues that they're having in terms of the special effects they might be having issues with, or the script and things like that. And a lot of people are saying that Ben Affleck is having issues with it, mostly because, A, it extends the shooting schedule, which no actor likes. Second of all, it seems like it might end up interfering with his upcoming directorial efforts, his adaptation of the book Live by Night, which he wants to start directing in the fall of either this year or next year. The article I'm reading hasn't been clear. And it also brings up some issues he's been having with writer David Goyer on the script, because there's been a lot of trouble, mostly with Goyer having issues with DC, and Affleck apparently has been having issues with that. And all these bits of news might actually turn out to be enough of a catalyst that Affleck might actually drop out of Batman and they might have to recast.
Right, so let me get this straight. Is Goyer the problem, or is Ben Affleck batting for Goyer?
Goyer's the problem.
I thought he would be.
Yeah, he said
the dude that stole the Green Lantern rights away from me. Fucking dick.
Yeah, David Goyer's one of those guys who sometimes he writes good movies and sometimes he doesn't. I mean, this is the same guy who wrote Blade 1 and Blade Trinity. The thing is,
I'm not gonna shit on the guy in terms of his credibility, because in the end, he won an Oscar for writing, so he obviously knows screenplays. I don't think that they should allow him to mess around with the Man of Steel franchise in a sense, because I really think the first movie was great, but the second movie should not be, you know.
Wait a minute. You're defending the first Man of Steel?
No. I'm saying if they really were going to do it, if it was going to be a sequel and it was just going to be Batman versus Superman, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. The fact that they're cramming all these other people into the movie is kind of fucking everything up.
Well, I think it's also down to studio interference. I think this is a big fight between not only Affleck and Goyer, but Goyer and Warner Brothers, because they're the ones that are pushing for the whole Justice League soft reboot. You know, Warner Brothers wants them to inject as many of these little characters in there and kind of lead into an upcoming Justice League movie. That's the problem I've always had with Warner Brothers, is that they always feel the need to interfere. And later down the line, I do want to do an episode on studio interference, but Warner Brothers is one of the big culprits. They've had a history of meddling with big-time franchises and not just letting the writer or the director do their thing. You know, they feel like they always have to meddle when they feel like they've got a big franchise on their hands.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. The problem is, when it comes to a lot of different directors, I think the only person who ever had not total control, but somewhat a great deal of control when it came to his movie and DC was Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan did the Batman sort of Dark Knight trilogy. He had a lot of say in that. And I only found this out today. I didn't even know. And I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Mark Joyce, who owns the Indigo Fox production company. He's an awesome guy and does some incredible work. So guys, check them out, and they also do some work for Addicted to MMA. If you want to have a look at that, he was telling me that apparently the Dark Knight Rises, they were going to have Nolan wanted the character of Batman to have the Joker as his kind of Hannibal Lecter in a sense. So the Joker would be helping him solve this mystery that he was involved in, and the secondary character who was going to be the main villain. But Ledger died. So. Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, there's always been that weird kind of relationship between Batman and the Joker in a way. You know, it's kind of goes more than just villain and hero. I mean, that could have worked. I could have seen that happening, but obviously that wouldn't have been the case due to Ledger's death. Honestly,
he went out and died, basically, so they decided to take it from the first movie and put Bane in it, which everyone had an issue with Tom Hardy's version of Bane because it wasn't true to the character.
Of course.
Yeah.
I love doing that. I really should find a soundbite of that and put it into the soundboard of just Bane doing that. I love the way he delivers that line.
Yeah, his character had this weird sort of... The voice was one of the biggest problems in it, but I think the other one was the character itself. You know, Bane just wasn't... It wasn't clicking. And casting Tom Hardy as Bane didn't really work for the character. And it's sad, really, because there could have been a lot more they could have done with that.
I think the biggest problem I had is kind of the same problem I had with Spider-Man 3, is that the movie just felt way too bloated. It had a lot of these little storylines here and there and so many characters, and I know they were going for more of an ensemble piece for this one, but at the end of the day, it's a Batman movie. You can't splay your storyline out too much. At the end of the day, it's got to be about Batman versus the villain, and I think this is the tipping point where it kind of went a little bit too far for me. I figured that going into the third one, because I love the second one a lot. I really think that that's probably the best in the series. I mean, Batman Begins is a great start and a fine reboot. I think The Dark Knight is a great follow-up to it, and like I said, it's probably the best out of the three. There wasn't anywhere they could go with Dark Knight Rises except more over the top with the story, and I think that's what happened, and to me, it just went too far.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things where they tried to take the character in a different direction, but it made no sense. Like Batman running away from the police, great, that's fine. But they didn't add to those layers. They didn't talk about it. They just went, oh, he's suddenly got knee problems for some fucking weird reason.
And I'll say this right now. I think they could have easily cut Catwoman out of that movie, and the movie would not have been that damaged by it.
Her character didn't really make any sense. And that was the problem. She seemed like she was the less written character in terms of that movie. And it's a shame. It's a damn shame. I think in terms of what they could have done with it and the actress they had involved, they kind of went the easy route and just marginalized her role.
I have a feeling that that her involvement in the third movie is kind of the same situation that Raimi had with Venom, where I guarantee you it was the studio saying, we've got this third movie, we got to get as many of the iconic characters in there, you've got to shove Catwoman in there somehow. That's kind of what happened with Raimi with Spider-Man 3. Raimi did not want Venom in Spider-Man 3. He had his story set up. It was going to be about the Sandman. He had that whole story fleshed out, and then the studios were like, no, we've got one more movie with you. You need to put Venom in there because that's the fan favorite. But he doesn't fit in there. I don't want him in there. We're the studio. It's our license. We'll tell you what to do. Here's a dump truck full of money. Get Venom in there. And I have a feeling that might be the case with Catwoman because, like I said, she does nothing. She does less in this movie than Tim Burton's Catwoman did in Batman Returns. And I love that version of Catwoman.
That's the problem. In the terms, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Daniel O'Neill here, aka Halfbit from the RetroLondon.com. He was saying about being on a planet of Michelle Pfeiffer's. I think Michelle Pfeiffer could play a character sultry and sexy like Catwoman so easily. She made it so the character was sort of antagonizing, but also sexy at the same time, and it kind of played really well. As opposed to Michael Keaton's Batman. You know, it blurred the lines between Bruce Wayne and Batman in terms of lifestyle and you know, having this kind of antagonist / anti-hero in terms of Selena Kyle. And it really, really worked in terms of that Burton-esque stitch leather. And they've never been able to repeat that.
Yeah.
Rather than a hero or a villain / hero instead of actually having the character together. And I think no other woman has actually understood the essence of who Catwoman is.
Well, clearly Halle Berry didn't, but we won't mention that ever.
No, that never happened.
Yeah.
Halle Berry played Storm badly in the X-Men, but I've never seen her as Catwoman.
I didn't mind her portrayal in X-Men. I thought she was all right.
X3.
Oh, yeah, X3 was terrible, but that...
Give a woman a speaking role, and that's what happens.
We'll talk about that when we get into further, because that guy is going to be... That guy's going to be on my list.
What no?
But, yeah, in terms of the Ben Affleck thing, honestly, I've read other articles about this, and I got to agree with their insight on this. If I were Ben Affleck, I'd walk, in all honesty. I think Ben Affleck has cemented himself as a great director. He's, Argo won Best Picture. He's obviously got his Oscar for screenwriting from Good Will Hunting in the 90s, so he's proven himself to be a phenomenal creative talent. Honestly, if he were to decide to never go back to movies and just, be a director, I'd be okay with that. I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I like Ben Affleck as an actor. There are some guys that are just better directors, and I think this is a situation where, honestly, he doesn't need to play Batman. He doesn't need to be involved in this. The
thing is, this movie itself looks like it's going to be a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And I don't think he needs to be associated with the clusterfuck.
Exactly, that's my point. He doesn't need this. He can walk away and salvage himself. He's got his next movie, the adaptation of the book Live by Night, which I want to know how that's going to turn out. I think there's a bright future for him as a director. I think he's going to be one of those big rock star directors, and that's something we're going to talk about later when we get into some positives, when we talk about some good directors that are popping up as of late. That's something I want to talk about. But yeah, he doesn't need this. There are still people who think that it's a bad idea for him to be Batman in the first place. I'm kind of 50-50 on it, to be quite honest with you.
I don't see bad things. I think Ben Affleck could be a very capable Batman. I just don't think this movie is going to be a very capable movie.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. DC has always had problems with getting their properties off the ground in movies, and I considering how easy it is for Marvel and how they've just been cranking out good movie after good movie, it's kind of bewildering, you know. And as a bit of a follow-up to that, their previous release date, let me see if I could pull up the actual article, but supposedly their previous summer July 31st, 2015. The original release date for the Batman Superman movie was July 31st, 2015, has now been filled by Marvel, who's going to be releasing their Ant-Man movie on that same day. Originally, Ant-Man hadn't released their release date, but now that the Batman Superman movie is going to be moved to 2016, Marvel's going to be moving their Ant-Man movie to that same date, the 2015 release date. Which I'm actually kind of excited. I'm kind of interested about. I mean, it's directed by Edgar Wright. You got Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas in there playing versions of Ant-Man. I don't know, you know. That could be an interesting movie. I don't know much about Ant-Man, but I think it's funny how
I'm not a fan of this, and I've said this before. I'm not a fan of them turning Hank Pym into this fucking laughing stock.
Well, I don't know what direction they're going to go with this. I mean, Edgar Wright obviously did stuff like Shaun of the Dead. He's worked a lot with Simon Pegg. I don't know where they're going to... I really can't say where they're going to take the character. I mean, it's still got to fit in within the universe of the phase of the Avengers universe, so I don't think it's going to be too far off the gamut. So who knows? You know, I'm not saying Edgar Wright's a bad director.
I'm just saying Ant-Man isn't old.
Well, no,
isn't an old man, and I don't understand why they're making him an old man in this. And a title's going to be coming up in April. They're killing the guy off.
What, the comic books?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why. I think Paul Rudd's not playing Hank Pym. Michael Douglas is, and Paul Rudd's going to be playing a much newer Ant-Man.
No, he's not playing a newer Ant-Man. He's playing the other guy, the thief. What's his name? I forgot what his name is.
Let me see if I can find it. Scott Lang?
Yes. And I think that's and taking away Ultron from Pym as well doesn't really help. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, no, aren't they going to be bringing Ant-Man into that event, into the upcoming Avengers 2? I think he's going to be routed back into it. So they're not taking Ultron from him. They're going to figure out a way to kind of route him into there.
Well, they are, because they're putting Stark as the creator of Ultron.
Oh, okay. Well, that changes everything.
Yeah, it's kind of... It's ridiculous, really. In my opinion, I think they're just doing the wrong thing with Hank Pym. They could have had Paul Rudd as Hank Pym. I think it would have worked. But they went the other direction. And originally, they had it they were going to shoot it over here in the UK, in Pinewood, but they decided against it.
That's unfortunate. You could have gotten some role as an extra or something.
Well, I wasn't going to get a role as an extra. I actually applied to be in the movie. I sent my resume over to them. Never heard anything back quite recently. And I think it's because they've actually gone from that location. They're going to be shooting it in Germany now. So, which is kind of sad. They're going to probably be using more German actors. Darn it! But, you know, it's not a bad thing in the end. I'm quite happy in a sense for them to do the movie. But in terms of what they're doing with the character, I don't feel that these movies are going to work as well as they should work. And a lot of that is because of the fact that I think they could really have gone in a proper direction with Ant-Man. But again, it's not my opinion. It's who Marvel really want. Marvel's done a really good job so far with the Iron Man movies, even though I hated Iron Man 3.
I liked Iron Man 3. I didn't hate it.
America, they've got the new Winter Soldier one coming out, which looks amazing. The Thor movies, apart from... I loved Thor 2, apart from there was one issue with it. that I had, and that was I just felt that Thor's love interest, what was her name?
Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman. She wasn't trying in this movie.
She wasn't trying too much in the first one either. That was kind of... love interests are always kind of hit and miss when it comes to movies.
Well, they gave her a more varied role this time. You know, she was supposed to be the strong, dominant woman, and instead she looked like she was hiding behind him, and even Loki at some points. And it was just like, really? Fine. But she just looked like she didn't really want to be there, which was a shame.
I haven't seen Thor 2 yet, but I do want to see it. It's one of those movies that I'm gonna, if I see it at a Red Box, I'll probably pick it up. I've just kind of been really lacking when it comes to catching up on my movies, but I should.
You should, and in terms of the way that the Thor franchise goes into this direction, it's kind of sad. I think in terms of characterization, in terms of the way that these characters work, they could have really done a lot with it, but decided to... I think we won't see her character again. They're either going to kill her off in the third movie, or we just won't see her at all. In terms of the direction that the rest of these characters are going to go into, we might not even see an Iron Man movie again.
Well, they've pretty much, depending on what direction they take Iron Man in Avengers 2, they pretty much wrote out Tony Stark's Iron Man. I mean, yeah. Iron Man, as we see it, as Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark's pretty much dead. He already took out the arc reactor out of his heart. So unless they're kind of, that's always been a plot hole that's always bugged me.
Well, the thing about it was the Extremis, and this is why I hated Iron Man 3 a lot. The Extremis plot line wasn't like the Extremis in the comics. The reason why he got the arc reactor taken out of the system was because he was badly beaten to the point of death. Yeah, he was going to die. And they pumped him with the Extremis into his system, where Stark rewrote it so his brain became a supercomputer. And he had access to satellites, his body could get connectors into it, to the point where he had more like varied abilities in terms of being Iron Man. And it would have been a great little plot line that he used that to become a more superior Iron Man. But in a sense, they just went in a different direction and went, oh, we'll just use the Extremis as fire-breathing demons, which is not what it is. The Extremis was a super soldier serum that allowed the body to change. It changed your DNA, your coding in the body, for a point of your brain, supposedly, that it would rewrite your genetic code so you could do amazing things.
I understand that. I'm one of these people, though, that I'm okay with keeping a separation between the comic books and the movies if the movie is well done, and I think it was well done. I think Shane Black did an excellent job. I think his script was really a lot of fun. Robert Downey Jr. obviously has been a great Iron Man. The only plot point that I will argue about, and this is something that goes back to the first and the second movies. Okay, they already established that Tony Stark's arc reactor is what powers the suit, right?
Yeah.
Then explain to me how War Machine works.
Exactly.
That was always a plot point that bugged me. That's like, wait a minute. He needs the arc reactor to power the suit. How's Brody using it?
Explain to me how the suit that he was wearing in Iron Man 3 only worked without,
Yeah, it kind of makes that whole ending of Iron Man 1 kind of a moot point, because the whole point of the ending for Iron Man 1 is he only had that cheapo battery, and, it would have wasted on him. Yet in this one, I don't even think the arc reactor really makes a point of... It doesn't really pop up until, like, the end when he throws it into the water.
Yeah. It makes no idea. It doesn't sound like it's supposed to. The arc reactor is supposed to be, it's supposed to be the
power source. It's supposed to be his.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be his Deus Ex. It's supposed to be the thing that he keeps in the back of his mind when he does things. And in the third one, it didn't even play a factor.
That's the problem. In terms of the character, it leaves a big plot hole from the first two movies. I specifically feel that Shane Black took a lot of liberties with the source material.
I can agree with that. I mean, but like I said, I'm willing to focus on the end product, and to me, the end product was enjoyable.
But now they've got to take him in a direction as where does he go from here?
Well, I've always thought I'm okay with that because Robert Downey Jr. is getting more and more expensive for Disney, and honestly, I think they put him in a situation where if they couldn't get him back for the next movies, they could always go with Don Cheadle as War Machine. War Machine technically is a member of the Avengers. They could always slot him into that role.
Technically, but on the same level, I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't believe that War Machine would be a good substitute.
I think they could. If they could get Downey back to kind of introduce him as a member, he kind of has to pass the torch to War Machine. I think the audience will get it. I think they'll be more than happy to. I was okay with War Machine. I think he did pretty well, especially the banter between him and Robert Downey Jr. They had great chemistry. So I think if they can figure out a way to kind of pass the torch down from Iron Man to War Machine, I think the fans will be a little bit more happy about it. I don't know about the casual audience, given that it won't have Robert Downey Jr. and he's one of the few actors that in this day and age can actually sell a movie just on his name. But we'll see.
I don't think War Machine could sell a movie on his name, to tell you the truth. You know, I think in a sense they need to look at. I think recasting would probably be the best idea. That's my opinion. They can recast, and if they recast, it's just got someone who looks like the character in order to play the character. You don't need another Robert Downey Jr. You just need someone who can play Tony Stark and give their own variation of it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I think, if you look at the old Batman movies, you would know. You know, you totally know what's going on in terms of those.
Well, to be fair though, those are all made by different directors. You know, Keaton was in the Burton era. You had the Schumacher era, which kind of had Clooney and Val Kilmer, and then in the Nolan era, you had Christian Bale. If they're going to keep
the same, it was still the same. Apart from the Nolan verse, it was still the same. So they, you know, in terms of Keaton, in terms of anybody else, they could have done it any way that they want. But in that opportunity, they've got to look at it as this way. You know, is it a good idea to recast? Yes. Is it a good idea to continue the story? Yes. Because there's a million different more stories going on. They don't need to go one way, they can go another. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they've got other ways of doing this. They've just got to continue. And they have to just figure, okay, shall we continue with a different Iron Man, or shall we just write off the character completely? Me, I would continue with a different Iron Man.
Well, folks, if you have any opinions on this conversation, join in on the chat. We still don't have any chat members. And if you want to join in verbally, 213-943-3434 is the number. We're going through our movie news segment in part 1, and then in part 2 we're going to go into our main segment. So if you want to join up on there, we'll be hitting that in the 9 o'clock hour. Let's move on to another big bit of news. Quentin Tarantino has abandoned his upcoming Western, The Hateful Eight, citing script leaking. Recently,
yeah, he's turning it into a book now, isn't he?
I have no idea what his plans are for it. He's meeting with publishers to turn it into a book. But for those of you that aren't aware, Tarantino has been in the works for a Western, like almost like a follow-up to his Django Unchained, called The Hateful Eight. And recently a script was leaked through the media press, through several agents, and this got Quentin Tarantino a little bit angry. Mostly not because people saw the first draft of the script, mostly because he only gave it to 6 people, and he actually names some of them. Bruce Dern is one of them, a fellow actor of his, Michael Madsen, Tim Roth, and obviously through them, their agents. So between those 6 people, that script got leaked, and he's not happy about that. You know, he doesn't like that he trusted these people with this first draft of a script, and now it's out there floating around on the internet. So
well, if it's floating around on the internet, then he's got to talk to these 6 people and say, hold up your hands, who was it?
yeah, he's investigating that right now. He's actually saying if anybody has any information out there, any agents, anybody in the know, please name names. He wants to know who leaked the script out. So he's not too happy about that, and he doesn't even think he's going to make the movie. He's shopping it out as a book right now. So I don't know what to say about that.
I see this as I'm a huge Tarantino fan in one sense, but in another I'm not. You know, I feel that his time is gone. If that makes sense, his time has passed in terms of great movies. He's a great director in a sense, but I just think he needs to step out of the limelight for a bit and do his own thing. You know, just spend some time away and then come back refreshed. That's what he did with Kill Bill, and Kill Bill worked amazingly well.
Yeah, he took a couple years break between Jackie Brown and Kill Bill, which I like Jackie Brown. I recently saw it on Netflix. I actually really dug that movie. I like the 70s throwback feel that it had.
Yeah, I agree.
But I can't really say, because Django Unchained, from what I've heard, is a great movie. I haven't seen it yet. I want to, but I've heard it did really well. It kind of surprisingly swept the Oscars. You know, that's
apparently he originally wanted Will Smith to play Django.
That's what I had always heard, and I could not see it. Even from the trailers, I can't see Will Smith playing that kind of character.
Well, Smith actually said that I couldn't play it, you know, and he went, because I'm not the lead. The lead is actually the DiCaprio's character.
Isn't it Christoph Waltz?
Was it Christoph Waltz?
Yeah, he's the guy he's the mentor to Django. The lead, DiCaprio's the villain.
Yeah, but he was like the villain. There's actually more screen time. The villain's actually more fleshed out. And so he went, you know what? I had to pass on it because I wasn't the lead. And I think that's a stupid reason to pass on something, not being the lead. But
yeah, I think that's a vanity issue, and that's unfortunate because I think this could have given Will Smith a huge breath of fresh air. He's been incredibly stale, especially after the bomb that was After Earth. I think if he'd have done this instead of After Earth, I think this would have given him a big career revival. I mean, this could have been his Travolta in Pulp Fiction.
I just think in my own way of thinking in terms of this, he's playing second fiddle in that movie to his son. So why is it he couldn't play second fiddle to DiCaprio? That made no sense to me.
Like I said, though, I don't think Will Smith would have been right to play that hard of a character. I think Jamie Foxx was great for it. You know, Jamie Foxx can play that kind of hard, just ruthless character that Django was. He's
very versatile, I have to admit.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those guys that surprised me. Like, I grew up watching him on, like, In Living Color and the Jamie Foxx Show, and if you'd have told me that same actor would have been an Oscar-nominated actor that's doing all these, like, deep films, I don't think I would have believed you. I'd have been like, this guy? Pfft, no.
It shows you basically what happens if you give someone a chance.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And they gave him a chance. And, you know, and I think it's awesome. And in terms of Smith, I think he needs to reevaluate what choices he's making. That I think in terms of him trying to get his kids out there, is kind of destroying his career in a sense. And any credibility he has as a bankable actor, which...
Yeah, he's kind of going insane in his later years, which is unfortunate because he had such a reputation of being a down-to-earth, smart actor. You know, he was one of these guys that you could always look at, and he was the regular man's actor, and in his old age, I guess he's kind of losing it, you know?
And I have to admit, in Men in Black 3, he wasn't the best thing in that movie. I think he got...
Men in Black? I think I've seen that movie.
Men in Black.
Yeah.
He wasn't the best in that movie. He was actually outshined by Michael Fassbender.
Oh, Fassbender is great. In fact, we actually got some news about relating to Michael Fassbender that we can actually talk about. Thanks for the segue. Our next bit of news is Daniel Espinosa has reportedly signed on to direct the Assassin's Creed movie. The director behind Safe House is supposedly signed on to be the director for the adaptation of the 20th Century Fox adaptation of the Ubisoft game Assassin's Creed. And I bring up Fassbender because Fassbender is not only starring in the movie, he's also producing it. And that movie is set.
Playing in the movie?
What?
Who is he playing in the movie? Do you know?
He's going to be the star, so I guess he's going to be playing the main character of it. I haven't played it. I've only played Assassin's Creed once, and I barely remember what the main character was. But it sounds like he might be playing whoever that main character is from the first game.
Well, spoiler alert, you know he's dead, right? He's only in the first 3 games, and they end up killing him off.
Yeah,
The only thing that's alive is his brain.
I never got into Assassin's Creed. I played it, and I couldn't get into the gameplay, in all honesty. And plus, I was turned off by the whole, it's actually a dream story. I was kind of just like, ugh. I would have been fine if it was just... Dream.
It's like he goes back into his past lives to figure out how he can deal with certain things, which is great. His character wasn't... The problem is they concentrated more on the dream sequence characters, the other assassins, than they concentrated on the main character, the main protagonist. And that's up to them, really.
Mm. Well, Michael Fassbender's a great actor, so
he is. He's really good. It's a shame what happened with Old Boy.
Was he in Old Boy?
I think he was, actually, wasn't he?
No, I don't think so. I'm getting an echo, by the way, on your end.
Should know, because I can... Can you hear me now?
No, I'm still hearing an echo a bit.
Let's...
No. Oh, no, now I'm hearing it at the tail end. Like, I kind of hear a little bit of my voice at the end. But it sounds like it's good. Sorry about that, folks. Production troubles. But no, I don't think he was in the Old Boy remake. I will say this. He was the best part of Prometheus, and I was not a big fan of Prometheus.
I'm looking at Old Boy at the moment on the IMDb.
Yeah.
Who was it? Spike Lee? Josh Brolin, you're right.
Yeah. Josh Brolin's a great actor.
Yeah, it wasn't Michael Fassbender who was in Men in Black 3, was it? It was Josh Brolin. There we go. Sorry, guys. It's like 1 a.m. here. My brain turns into mush.
Like I said, Fassbender's biggest role that I know of is as the android in Prometheus. And I did not like Prometheus, but I liked him. I thought he was a great actor in that.
Just looking at Michael Fassbender. Because he was, at one point, he was even pegged to be Batman, wasn't he? He was one of the chosen few. Yeah,
there were a ton of people that were chosen to be Batman at one point, but I believe that might have been him.
He's announced for a film called Genius. He's been announced for Assassin's Creed, and he's playing the character of Desmond Miles, who's basically... Desmond Miles, for those of you who don't know, he's the main protagonist in the Assassin's Creed games, but he doesn't really do much. He's like the guy that you do certain key events. The biggest thing he did was in Assassin's Creed 3. Yeah. So let's continue on that. And apparently Gal Gadot has signed a 3-picture deal, which includes a Justice League and a Wonder Woman solo film.
I had read about that, but I've given up on hopes of a Wonder Woman movie. I mean, they've been trying to get one off the ground for years now. You know, it's one of those things to where they seem to be incredibly gun-shy about getting a Wonder Woman movie off the ground. I mean, and I think
don't like Gal Gadot in a sense. She's like lost tons of weight from when she originally started with the Fast and Furious franchise. If you saw her originally, she was actually very well filled out, and then she just lost all this weight and got really skinny. And I don't understand that.
Yeah, I think you need a more built woman to play that role, which is funny because, you know, they were talking about, like, people in Fast and the Furious that could have played that. I could have honestly seen, what's her name? Oh, God, I'm blanking on her name. She's the UFC fighter that she was in, Haywire. Oh, my God, why am I blanking out on this name? Good old internet. Hold on. Gina Carano, that's who she is, yeah. I think she could have filled out the role well. I think she's an okay lead. I mean, Haywire was pretty well acclaimed.
I just don't understand why they would go with someone like Gal Gadot. And again, I'm not being biased against her acting talent. She's an okay actor. She's very credible, but she needs to gain a bit more like mass and strength.
Yeah.
And she basically needs to fill out a lot more because Wonder Woman is not a skinny woman.
No, she's a built woman. Like, she's not over the top muscular, but she kind of has the look that you would see on like a modern WWE diva, like a good one. Even
someone like AJ, in a sense. I'm
thinking more of a Beth Phoenix build, honestly.
Not have Beth Phoenix. I think it's one of those things where I would say she doesn't have to be too big, but she doesn't have to be too small. She just has to be right in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And I don't think Gal Gadot is in the middle. I think she's sort of size 0 material.
Well, like I said, they've always been confused in terms of how to approach a Wonder Woman movie, which is weird. I mean, just do the story. Don't try to overthink it. I mean, look at Marvel with the Guardians of the Galaxy. They're like, here, we've got a raccoon with a rocket launcher. Go.
Again, but that has a bit of a issue in terms of James Gunn. He's the guy who wrote Lollipop Chainsaw.
Slither. I think he wrote the Dawn of the Dead remake.
He did. And I don't have an issue with him, but don't expect this to be a cinematic masterpiece.
Oh, he's a B director. I'm well aware of that. I'm completely fine with it. I mean, he's going to have fun with the script, so we'll see how it goes, Yeah,
it's one of those things where let it go, let's see how it turns out, but don't expect it to be the biggest and bestest thing in the whole world. Just look at it as it is, an independent Guardians of the Galaxy movie that might be really, good, or it might not be. So don't sit there and think, oh, why hasn't this worked, or why hasn't this been done? Because you're going to start freaking getting angry. Let's see how it goes. If it's great, yay. If it's not, then yeah.
And speaking of let's see how it goes, a bit of an odd segue. Folks, if you're out there and you want to join in on our flash chat, log on to the blogtalkradio.com and check out the Retro Unlimited Network page. You can go in through the Untitled Movie Show episode that way. It's live right now, and you can join in on our chat. If you want to call in, it's 213-943-3434. Still no callers, but, we're holding out hope. We've got about 20 more minutes left until we head into the 9 o'clock hour. A bit of a segue into that mention of Guardians of the Galaxy. I wasn't going to bring this up, but since you brought up Guardians of the Galaxy, a bit of news that actually surprised me. Stan Lee will not be appearing in Guardians of the Galaxy. He stated that unlike his other movies that he's popped in and made cameos in, he will not be making an appearance in the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Why is that?
He didn't write it. Guardians of the Galaxy is not a Stan Lee creation, so he's not going to be in it.
So, okay. So that's why he said it.
Yeah, that's basically like, it wasn't my creation, so I'm not going to be a part of it. Which makes sense.
Yeah, at least he's basically admitting that and saying, hey, even though I had a hand in it, I didn't create it.
Yeah, I mean, Stan Lee didn't create every Marvel character. He just created most of them. It's like Walt Disney. Walt Disney didn't create all the Disney characters, just the big important ones, So I can understand him taking a step back and being like, this is somebody else's thing. I'm just kind of going to watch from afar. And that's fine. I respect that.
Yeah, because at least it's allowing it to do its thing,
Yeah.
But it's not a bad thing.
No. And since we're doing little bits of news here and there before we head out, one bit of news that actually has me excited, HBO Go is finally coming to the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. After years and years of fans demanding it, HBO is finally releasing their HBO Go app to the PS3 and PlayStation 4 platforms. I'm actually excited about this. I think my parents have HBO Go, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe I can use their hookup then and maybe get some action in. Supposedly they're doing this to coincide with the season 4 premiere of Game of Thrones on April 6th, so they're going to be releasing it sometime before then.
Well, there's hopeful that we. I don't know. Don't know what to think about that one.
I'm happy because I want to see more app development for the PS3. There's so many apps out there that are on the 360 that have not made it to the PS3, and it really irritates me. Like I'm still mad that Blip hasn't announced an app for the PS3 because I love watching that guy with the glasses and a lot of other videos on Blip, but you can't do it on the PS3. You know.
Let's give a shout out to Jess Otaku, by the way. She's awesome.
I've
tried watching her stuff, and she's just, like, extremely amazing. And good looking, too.
I love whenever she pops up on Nash's videos, like Nash Bozard. He's really funny. I love watching his WTF videos.
Yeah, she pops up in a lot of Guy with the Glasses stuff. She did one Chemist and Nostalgia Critic, and that was it, basically.
Oh, her Digimon crossover?
Yeah.
That was fun. I liked that episode.
That sort of got me into her. Because I watched the episode, and he's very kooky as always what he does, but she really sort of drew me in.
Yeah. She's a pretty attractive girl. Honestly, in terms of that, I'd have to go more Mars Girl. I'm a big Mars Girl fan.
Well, I love to see her in a bikini. I saw her in a couple of her videos in bikinis and stuff, and her stuff's really short as well at the same time. She keeps it very simplistic, so she doesn't go into spoiling the films and stuff. She just talks about her opinion on it.
Yeah.
And lets that go from there, and it's really good. She's very intelligent as well. She's done a lot of She did a review with another anime reviewer. I've forgotten what his name is.
Oh, you right there, buddy?
Yeah. Something just fell over. Hopefully it's nothing big.
Oh no, it's my 3DS.
I'm hoping it's not, because I'm really hoping it's not. Something fell over. I think it's probably my portable hard drive.
Oh, that's always a bad news.
Yeah,
Dude, I had that happen to a friend of mine. She was transferring stuff over to my computer, and I went to kind of turn my chair around, twist my chair a bit, and the whole laptop went, and so did the portable hard drive, and I never heard the end of that.
I'm hoping that there's nothing wrong. I'm just actually checking on my machine at the moment to see. Oh no, it disappeared. So there's probably something going on. I'll deal with it in a bit.
Okay.
Can't really do much with it.
Let's transition from drooling over that guy with the glasses girls to a little bit more sexy talk. I've been fascinated about this movie. I don't know why, because I think the book is one of the worst things ever written, but they just announced news on the upcoming adaptation for E.L. James's 50 Shades of Grey, and surprise, surprise from Hollywood, it's going to be severely toned down. The book is supposedly sources within Universal have said that many sexual elements of the book are actually going to be toned down severely for the film. This doesn't surprise me, and actually, that's one of the reasons that this thing is fascinating about me, because Hollywood for years, at least within the last 10 years, has been very anal about adult content in their movies. I mean, so many movies nowadays, and we're going to talk about that later down the line when it comes to the whole self-censorship that movies have been getting as of late. You know, so all these movies cut down from R's to PGs. This is going to be a big movie studio release for what is essentially almost an X-rated book, and I've always been sitting there going, all right, Hollywood, how are you gonna mess this up? How are you going to anger the fans? How are you going to screw this whole thing up? And it sounds like the gears are in motion, because they're starting to dial it back. And I've been joking with a friend of mine. I would not be shocked if they released this thing as a PG-13.
What movie is that?
What?
What movie is that?
The 50 Shades of Grey. Like I said, it's just the whole concept of a major studio releasing an adaptation of a book like this fascinates me. And like I said, I would not be surprised if Universal gets gun-shy and they release a censored version of this, a PG-13 cut, because that's what Hollywood does. They neuter their movies so that they can get the most people in. And like I said, we'll talk about that somewhere down the line, about the whole self-censorship that Hollywood movies have been getting. But I'm going to laugh if that's the case. If this thing gets released with a PG or a soft R, I'm going to be howling, because that's just hilarious. Like I said, I despise this book. I've heard it read. It's one of the worst things I've ever heard. I'd rather listen to an audiobook of Twilight on a loop than this book.
While you're tied down.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that one. I'm not the biggest fan of Twilight, and 50 Shades of Grey started off as Twilight fan fiction.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I decided to publish on Kindle, by the way. Did you know the author of that book actually makes, at one point she was making $1 million per hour? Because she originally self-published the book on Kindle, it started to make waves, then a publisher got a hold of it to actually publish it in book format, and it continued. So she was getting 70% of her royalties from Kindle, and the other publishing company that was publishing her book, I believe it was Random House, was getting royalties for every paperback that was sold.
It's awful, though. It's one.
Yep.
Look, I've heard people read it seriously, not in a parody sort of way, because I've heard a ton of versions of parodies. Some of my favorites include John St. John, the voice of Duke Nukem. He was at a panel, and somebody, I think he was with the Team 4-Star guys, and they gave him a copy of the book, and they had him read segments of the book in Duke Nukem's voice. It was surreal. It was surreal. And speaking of Team 4-Star, they actually did a panel with the Nostalgia Critic at another con where they were reading bits and pieces from the book as characters from their Dragon Ball Z Abridged series. That was funny. Funny enough, actually, some of those lines actually sound better coming out of Vegeta's mouth. The voice fits the content. I don't know why. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, it fascinates me. Like,
She took her penis and put it into her vagina.
Oh, the prose is worse, dude. It's worse than that. But like I said, I will say one iota of positive about this. The book's terrible. Given it to the hands of the right screenwriter, you could make a solid film based on this. I mean, look at something like Basic Instinct from Paul Verhoeven. What?
At the end of the day, it's porn. Like, Basic Instinct wasn't porn. It was Sharon Stone showing her minge, but it wasn't porn. It
was an erotic thriller, though. In
a time when erotic thrillers were worth a grain of salt, you know. Then they ended up oversaturating the market with Shannon Tweed films.
Yeah, that's different. That's direct-to-video. I'm talking about theatrical stuff. And
but have you seen, after Basic Instinct, have you seen any other films that are like that sort of movies? No.
No, there were. Jade from William Friedkin. There was the Wild Things movie. That was an erotic thriller. They've done other erotic thrillers after that. It's kind
Wild Things was one of those things where it worked as an original story, but not as an ongoing series. And from what I'm told about the 50 Shades thing, they're going to try and do it into a quadrilogy of films, and it's not going to work.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, I'm probably not going to see the movie. Although, who knows? Maybe it's so bad I might have to. Maybe it's going to be this generation Showgirls. Who knows? You know.
Showgirl. The only saving grace was that Elizabeth Berkley was doing lesbian.
Yeah, well, I've never seen the uncut version. I've only seen bits and pieces from the HBO cut, which was the R-rated cut, so I didn't see any of the hardcore scenes. But that's something I'll have to go into. And speaking of which, let's end our movie segment with a little Shia LaBeouf news. We celebrated last week of Shia LaBeouf's impending retirement from all public life, apparently. And it turns out he's doing some backtracking and saying that not only is he not retired, but his whole plagiarism thing that he's been going on has been all part of a giant performance art stunt where he's been working with screenwriter David Ayer, man behind the Screenwriting Training Day, and the Museum of Modern Art's poet in the Museum of Modern Art to do a sort of living piece on plagiarism. Basically, a lot of people are comparing this to what Joaquin Phoenix did when he transformed himself in 2009.
He's plagiarizing Joaquin Phoenix now. Fuck's sake.
You know what? I didn't even think about that angle, but pretty much you're right. He's kind of copying what Joaquin Phoenix...
His idea, Shia LaBeouf, get a fucking original bone in your body, right, and start fucking working as a proper actor.
Yeah.
Stop trying to do these publicity stunts and all that bullshit, or whatever the fuck you want to name it, and just entertain people. If you're that good an actor, start acting.
Yeah.
Why are you going around doing this bullshit? Are you bored? You know, why don't you start a band with Justin Bieber or something like that, for fuck's sake? Because you two seem like you're starving for attention.
Well, in the case of the Bieb, he might end up getting moved back to Canada, so that might not be a bit of an issue.
I hope he gets moved back to Canada. And as far as I'm concerned with Shia LaBeouf, in the end, if you keep fucking everything up, then you're going to end up just getting fucked.
Yeah. This is just another case of a young actor just going insane, which is unfortunate. You know, I hate to see it happen. At the same time, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe this whole plagiarism thing is all a big stunt. You don't make money off of other people's work. It doesn't matter if it's a stunt. You can't just go around and go, oh, I'm just kidding. No, you made a movie copying somebody else's work. You've written stuff copying other people's work, and you've made money off of other people's work. You're not kidding anymore. You're a plagiarist. You can't just all of a sudden go, I'm just joking. You know, I'm just having fun. It's a performance art thing. You're not
a plagiarist. He's a fucking idiot.
Yeah. You've officially stolen other people's work. You know, that takes it to a different direction. And in my opinion, dude, just stop. Just take a couple of years off, get your thoughts cleared, come back. You're still young, so I can't say you're completely untalented. I mean, it's taken a lot of actors years before they hit their stride. And, you know, LaBeouf has a screen presence to him. He's got a charisma to him. Couple years maybe out of the limelight to live a real life, come back, and maybe who knows, maybe Spielberg will take you back. Apparently Spielberg loves the kid, so he'll put him in everything. So
well, he does, because the kid's Jewish and probably reminds him of himself. I'm not being racist against Jewish actors or directors and stuff, but in the end, that's what he wants to do. You know, if he wasn't Jewish, I don't think he would get the same, the same sort of push that Spielberg would give to most. Because have you seen Spielberg give any of that kind of push to anybody else? He was in nearly everything that Spielberg did or produced. You know, come on. It's ridiculous, and I think in terms of actors, he could have really, really... There could have been anybody that could have got that push, but it went to Shia LaBeouf, who's now a fucking dick.
Yeah, he's kind of going bananas, and he really does need to take a step back and reassess himself. Like I said...
Does this. All actors tend to go like that, you know?
Yeah, they go nutty after a while. Maybe it's complacency. Maybe he's done so many successful things, maybe he's just tired of it, you know? We've seen that with so many successful actors and actresses. They just get to a point where success gets to them, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Like I said, I think he needs to take a step back, kind of, you know, maybe not even do big budget movies anymore. Do a couple little projects here and there to kind of get your ego in check, and then come back to the mainland and see where it goes, you know?
He needs to humble himself.
Yeah, basically.
He's a good actor, don't get me wrong. He is a good actor. He's not amazing. He's a good actor, and he needs to really sort himself out, you know, in terms of what he does. It's just... I don't know. It really annoys me as well, what he's doing. It's anyone could be in a position that he's in, and it really pisses me off how some people squander their opportunities, because in the entertainment industry, opportunities are few and far in between.
Oh, definitely.
I'm a fucking struggling actor myself. I'm gonna throw that out there, guys, because I'm a struggling actor myself. I do all these millions of different projects, but I'm also a struggling actor who tries to find ways to get an audition. So the way I see this is it's really frigging annoying going through all of this and trying to gain these opportunities, and someone like Shia LaBeouf gets those opportunities and then pisses them off. Doesn't make sense, you know?
Well, trust me, we can get into a whole debate on the untalented getting opportunities. In fact, that might be an episode to do later down the line as well. We're getting a lot of good ideas for episodes. I'm actually kind of giddy because it's going to keep the show going a lot. Between the whole PG thing that we were talking about, untalented people, I mean, sky's the limit, folks. We'll see where it goes. Speaking of the untalented getting opportunities, that brings us into the 9 o'clock hour, and that brings us into our main topic. But before we get into that, folks, you still haven't logged into the Flash Chat. We only see the Retro Unlimited Network on there. Be a part of the conversation. Join us in our chat or call in number 213-943-3434. Wait a minute. Folks, I'm an idiot. I'm a complete moron. I've been giving you the host number for the past hour.
Don't worry. It's just Miguel, people. It's fine.
I'm an idiot. I should be fired. The real number, 718-664-9265. That's the real number.
Or you click on the Skype button above the player, peeps.
Yeah, I'm retarded, folks. I'm sorry.
He's not retarded. Retarded people actually do a better job.
Oh, that's unfair. But granted. It's granted. Folks, yeah, 718-664-9265. If you are still listening and you haven't been frustrated by me giving you the wrong number, please call in. We'd love to hear some more voices. I can't just keep talking to Burhan for the next hour. I'm just kidding, Burhan. Love you.
Yeah, you better. Otherwise, I'll just go.
I enjoyed your last episode of the Untitled movie show.
No, I wouldn't do that. Come on. I've got more. If I lose the Untitled movie show, I'll lose one of the highest rated shows of the week.
Oh, you flatter me.
We do have. You know, I have to admit, we've got some amazing shows on this network, which we can talk about later. But the Untitled Movie Show has been rated one of the highest shows of the week. So keep going, dude. You know, you're doing an amazing job. Let's keep pushing this thing and getting us out there.
Okay, enough butt kissing. Let's go into the main topic. And tonight's topic is going to be on good directors gone bad. Now, Burhan, you've been saying before you're a director. You've made projects before. You've got your This Job for Hire thing, which is out there. By the way, check that out. It's on YouTube.com. Check out the 3rd episode. It's written by me.
Yes, I'm going to be having that. Should be coming out soon, guys. Sorry, I know I'm taking ages because I'm doing like a ton of projects at the same time. Yeah, go on.
Well, you're a director, so
yeah.
You've been doing this for a while now. When a director gets to a point when he's no longer making product that is up to his own standards, where he started off good, made some great movies, and then as the years have gone by, has just been putting out just garbage upon garbage upon garbage. As a director, what do you do? Do you reflect on that? Do you continue doing what you're doing? In your opinion, as a director, what's the best course of action?
I would basically what I would do is put a panel together of people, and I would do a show like a sort of a cast, maybe a marathon of my films, and the ones that people have picked out as been the worst, and ask people what I could do to change and what they feel is lacking in my material, because I think that would help in a sense, because my fans, if people follow me religiously and know me and understand what I do and how I do it, they'll probably be the best people to talk to about how I've lost my way in a sense. I'm very critical. I'm very self-critical about anything that I do. If I act in a project, if I write a project, even if I direct a project, I am very, very critical of myself. And I tend to look at stuff and say, right, what have I done wrong? What can I do to improve? How can I improve? And then push as much as I can. And I know I've done some stinkers. Don't get me wrong. I've done some stinkers in terms of what I've acted in. In terms of the way I direct projects, I've done some good projects, but I can always be better, you know?
Well, what brought up this discussion for me is I recently have been looking up information on the Legend of Hercules, the most recent adaptation of Hercules that came out this year. And this movie right now is sitting at a 3 on Rotten Tomatoes. And like I've said before, I said this on IGG. I got gameplay this past weekend when we talked about the Silent Hill movies. Most bad movies usually sit between 10 and 20%, but it takes a special few to hit less than 5%. You really got to try hard. And The Legend of Hercules right now is sitting at a 3 on Rotten Tomatoes. So I did research on it, and I noticed that the director is Renny Harlin. And I looked back on his filmography. This is the same guy who did Die Hard 2. He did Nightmare on Elm Street 4. He did Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone. The Long Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
So he's done some critically acclaimed work, and as of late, man, he's done this. He did The Covenant back in 2006, which I've seen bits and pieces of. It's basically...
God, that film's terrible.
Yeah, and that film's also sitting at a 3. That basically...
Teeny bopper fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's a bunch of girls getting into bitch fights.
It's basically what if Twilight was co-produced by the CW.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically that. You know, he did the Exorcist prequel, which it's funny the story behind that. He basically stole that from Paul Schrader. He the studio was in development of their own version of Exorcist Exorcist prequel, but they weren't happy with the way Paul Schrader was doing it. Paul Schrader, of course, is let me see what Paul Schrader has done, because he's done some really good movies. Let's see. He did Raging Bull, Taxi Driver. Let's see. I think, he's American Gigolo. He's an accomplished director, but they didn't like the direction he was taking the movie, so they gave it to Renny Harlin. The funny thing is that they took the same script and made a different movie called Dominion, precursor to The Exorcist. So you've got 2 different Exorcist prequels made by the same studio, both using the same script, but both radically different. Harlan's is more action-oriented, Schrader's is more horror, but they're basically the same movie. So I think I've always been fascinated by that story. But going back to Harlin, this is a guy that went from making stuff like Die Hard 2 and Cliffhanger to making stuff like The Legend of Hercules and The Covenant and Blast from the Past with Brendan. No, he produced that. He did Driven, the Sylvester Stallone IndyCar movie, and he also did 12 Rounds with John Cena. So this is a guy who went from making really good movies into the 90s to today making just garbage, like substantial garbage. And so that got me thinking about directors that have kind of fallen from grace, that have, were once good at one point in their career, but have kind of fallen flat. And so I did some research, and I looked up a lot of directors that a lot of people say have kind of hit that. So I've got a few of them on here, and honestly, the first big one I got to talk about, and I didn't even realize this until I saw this list, and you and I can have a lot to say, and that's Shyamalan. Shyamalan is the definition of a director who started off great and has just been going downhill ever since. I like The Sixth Sense. I think it's a phenomenal movie, and I didn't even know it was nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture that year, but it was. And I think it deserves it. I think it's a great movie. I haven't seen Unbreakable, but I've heard good things.
Yeah.
I still like Signs, even though it's got plot holes like crazy. I still like the movie.
Yeah, Signs is an okay movie, don't get me wrong, but it's one of those where I think as a director myself, I was kind of... I think the whole thing that went downhill in terms of Shyamalan was that he kind of screwed the pooch with himself, in a sense. I think he's a far better writer than he is a director. And he screwed the pooch because people started comparing him to being the next Spielberg.
I remember seeing that. I think it was like Entertainment Weekly or People. One of the big magazines had that as their headline, the next Spielberg.
Yes. And he believed it.
Yeah, pretty much. He bought into his own hype.
And, and then he started putting himself in his own movies and, being the fucking god among men and stuff. And it kind of killed any, any sort of decision-making that this guy had. And he just continuously made bad movies with these twisted plots. And he kept doing twists.
Yeah, that's, for me it started off slow. I liked Science. I saw The Village, and up until the ending, I was okay with the movie. I thought it was a little bit wooden in terms of its acting, but at the same time, I thought it had some solid mood to it. But that ending, man, the whole twist at the end, I think, honestly, that ruined the movie for me because I was not a big fan of it, and plus it's actually ripped off from another movie. I've read from a book actually. I believe he was sued because that twist ending was actually the plot of a much bigger of a book series. I forget the book because I read it in high school, but I can't name it off the top of my head. Basically, if you've never seen The Village, if you've never seen it, screw it. I'm still gonna spoil the ending. It's revealed that the village that they live in, this old-timey, like 1800s era, turn of the century village, is actually a cut-off sanctuary in the modern world, and that it was actually created by several people who were living in the inner city, who had experienced loss, and they were like, you know what, we're just going to reject the modern world and kind of take it back to the old school and kind of, bring people up on old school values. And I'm just like, I did not like that ending. I liked it when it was a ghost story about a haunted woods. To me, it was just an unnecessary twist. But I was beholden to it. I was like, all right, every director's allowed one bad movie. Maybe the next one will be good. And then his follow-up was Lady in the Water. I haven't seen Lady in the Water. Have you?
Yes, I have. It had Ron Howard's daughter in it as well, and Paul Giamatti, and it was just nonsensical and stupid.
Well, it's funny that I've actually heard different things. I've heard a lot of bad, but I've heard some good. Lady in the Water, funny enough, that movie actually was the reason that Shyamalan cut ties with Disney, because Disney, I think through I don't know who produced it. It was in Miramax or whatever, but it wasn't Walt Disney Pictures. But Shyamalan basically wrote this movie as a kids movie. It was marketed as a horror film because at the time Shyamalan was known for horror, but he had outright admits he wrote that movie as a bedtime story for his children. He wrote it as kind of an urban fantasy of sorts. But Disney did not want to promote it as such. They wanted it to be like, the scariest thing you'll ever see. Oh, my God, it's terrifying. And that's not what it was supposed to be. So they really poorly mismarketed this movie. And Shyamalan was so angry, he basically cut ties with Disney, which takes a lot of guts considering it's Disney we're talking about.
Yeah, they have a very big market share. Cutting ties with Disney is like freaking cutting your knob off.
Yeah, but he was not happy with the way they did that. He didn't want to be pigeonholed as this horror director.
The thing is, though, his stuff is very nonsensical, and he puts himself off to be a horror director. If you want to have movies that are not in that sense, then you've got to push it and show people why that this is a children's movie, because I watched it, and it didn't look anything like a fucking children's movie. It didn't even look like a horror movie. It just seemed like a bad movie.
Yeah.
And it's not even the room quality bad. I mean, really bad. Like
Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, it made Battlefield Earth look like a credible film that you could watch again and again. Exactly.
Yeah.
The actors were fine, but the problem is, and the nostalgia critic said it best, he sucks the life out of anybody that reads his script. It's like Will Smith, a guy who's a very energetic and very charismatic actor. If you see him in After Earth, he's just like a fucking wooden stake.
Well, we'll get into that in a little bit because I'm going a little bit chronologically because, yeah, he wanted to kind of break away from horror. So what's his next big project? The Happening, which, I mean, it's a terrible movie, but I suggest anybody go out there, go see it. It's one of those things you have to see to believe. It really has earned its right as a party bad movie. I mean, between Mark Wahlberg's wooden acting, almost Pine-like, to basically the ridiculous premise of having to run away from the wind and the plants killing us. I mean, there's some aspects of it that are fun, that are interesting, but
the thing is as well, though, this was distributed by UTV Cinema. Now, most people who don't know, UTV deal with a lot of Asian films, like Indian, Bollywood release types films. They expanded into the American market, and I think a lot of it was due to the fact that Shyamalan is I believe, I don't know if he's Pakistani or if he's actually Tamil in terms of the way his direction goes, but he had contacts who decided to distribute his film via them. Problem is, kind of fucked that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I got to disagree with you in terms of Shyamalan being a good writer. I think he's a great director. I think he's a terrible writer. He comes up with great ideas, but stitching those ideas together in a coherent script, I think, is his biggest fault. I think he's a guy that really could benefit from partnering up with a better writer. Because like I said, the guy's got he can build up great mood. I still like The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable and Signs. I still think those are really moody movies. I don't think he's a bad director. I just think he sucks as a writer. And I think he needs a better person to kind of go in there and kind of make his scripts more human. You know, because like I said, I agree. I think all of his movies suffer from being incredibly wooden, but that's a script issue, and he writes a lot of his movies.
Yeah, no, I agree. But the thing is, sometimes if you don't know how to pull off certain things, it's usually the best way to actually get it done is by allowing your actors a bit more freedom to pull their characters off. And that's another thing that I kind of do in terms of my direction and the way that I work with these characters. I tend to work with them in order to get things working. You know?
Yeah. And then you've got his two follow-up movies, which are The Last Airbender and After Earth, which those were heartbreaking, man. When I heard he had signed on to do Last Airbender, I was kind of like, I was like, all right, maybe he's, maybe it's a situation where he's tied to a franchise and he's not doing his own original thing and there's not going to be that whole Shyamalan twist to it. But, oh my God, I saw that. I saw that in theaters. I got tricked into that because I had cousins visiting at the time and they're big Airbender fans, and I got tricked into watching that movie. That movie was garbage. I mean, I've seen Sci-Fi Channel direct-to-DVD movies that aren't as bad as that. And honestly, I used to say that I didn't think it was that bad considering I wasn't a fan of the series, but having gone back and watched bits and pieces of it, no, it is bad. And obviously, we've talked about After Earth, which I don't blame Shyamalan. I think that was a situation where he got roped into that. He was a hired gun, which I don't know why you get M. Night Shyamalan to direct your movie if you're Will Smith and you're just going to take over the project. But we've talked at length about that movie. That movie is just bad, and I actually feel more bad for Shyamalan. Folks, we'd love to hear you get in on the conversation. If you'd like to join in on the chat, we still got people in the chat that haven't. We've still got nobody in our chat, and we haven't had any callers. So just give us a call, 718-664-9265. That's the actual number. It's not the host number that I've been peddling for the past hour because I'm an idiot. But join in on the chat. Call us in. If you got any opinions. We're talking about good directors gone bad. And Burhan, I see, is coming back to the show. Oh, he isn't. He's actually just telling me just to keep stalling. So yeah, we're going to be talking more about directors that have kind of fallen from grace. And one that Actually, I hate to say, it's weird because I'm gonna put all these directors that I'm about to name into a category of child directors, because you look at a lot of these that I'm about to name, it's guys like Brian Levon, Steve Carr. These guys are basically known for making mostly kids movies. You know, they're guys like Steve Carr, for those of you who don't know, directed Are We Done Yet?, Rebound with Martin Lawrence, Daddy Daycare, Dr. Dolittle 2. Brian Levon was responsible for the awful Christmas Story 2 that recently came out. He also directed the Flintstones movies, the original Are We There Yet? I'm kind of going to lump these guys together and say that I don't know if these guys ever really had talent. I mean, they kind of fall into that really bad kind of kids movie thing where if you're a kid and you like it, fine, but they're not good movies. You know, they kind of fall into that whole bad directors that stayed bad. Let's see, what else can we talk about? I'm kind of at a loss right now. Our sidekick, Michael Burhan, has kind of stepped out for a bit, so I'm kind of just spitballing here. But let's see. Let me just go through my notes and see who else we can talk about in terms of bad directors. Here's one. You want to talk about a director that's kind of fallen from grace? I got 3 words for you folks. Francis Ford Coppola. This director, man, how do you go from directing the first two Godfather movies and directing stuff like The Outsiders and Apocalypse Now and really solid he produced American Graffiti, but how do you go from directing stuff like Apocalypse Now and the Godfather movies to directing Jack, the awful, Robin Williams kids movie? That movie makes Patch Adams look good, and that's saying a lot. Coppola really hasn't done anything left. He co-directed parts of the movie Supernova, but that movie was so bad he didn't even want his name on it. He hasn't really directed much since. Burhan, come back. I need opinion on this. Let's see. Folks, we're having some technical difficulties, so we're going to take a bit of a time. We're having a couple of technical difficulties right now, so I'm going to step out for a little bit and see what the situation is. So if you guys will just hang on with us, we're kind of having some weirdness. So I'm just going to kind of put everything on hold until then. This is the Untitled Movie Show, Episode 3, Good Directors Gone Bad, and we will come back to you guys in a bit.
Hello. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank God you're back, Burhan. I was actually about to put some music on and kind of give you some time. I was dying, man. I was dying. No, literally. Go back and listen to this. I'm basically like, Burhan, come back.
I do apologize. I've been very, very busy. I just had to quickly run off.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm back now. Sorry, I just had a bit of a problem that I had to sort out.
This is why we need more people on the show. I can't be left by myself on here. I start to stutter and kind of just fall apart. But thank God you're back, because we could talk about some more bad directors. Let's talk about a director who I think is who surprisingly enough was a big director back in the 70s and has fallen off the face of the earth, and I don't know why. And that's Francis Ford Coppola, the man that brought us Godfather 1 and 2, The Outsiders, Apocalypse Now, and Jack. One of these things doesn't belong here, Burhan. I'm going to give you a guess as to which one. Apocalypse Now, Outsiders, Jack. Yeah, for those of you that don't remember when Robin Williams made that movie where he played a 10-year-old? Yeah, that was Francis Ford Coppola, and that pretty much killed his career at that point. I mean, how do you do that? How do you go from making the Godfather movies to that? And I said it before when you weren't on here. That movie makes Patch Adams look Oscar-worthy. That movie's terrible. I've seen that movie.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's one of those movies where it's just like, really?
It desperately tried to be Oscar bait. Like, you can smell it. Like, he was just like, I'm going to make a tearjerker Oscar baity movie. Audience, you will cry. And I was more like, I will throw up. I did not like that movie at all.
Why?
It's just, like I said, first off, Robin Williams was not playing a 10-year-old. I've seen 10-year-olds. They don't act like... Robin Williams was playing a 10-year-old retard. I'll say that right now. Because for some reason he decided, I'm going to play this like Forrest Gump, and I don't know why he did that. Like, there's a difference between playing a timid outsider and basically playing somebody who's completely and utterly devoid of social skills.
Yeah, it's one of those where you sit there and think, really?
Yeah.
Do we need to go into that whole situation? Yeah.
I don't. I mean, you can tell Coppola wanted this to be a sincere movie, but it just came off as so insincere. You know, it was Oscar bait. I'm gonna say it right now.
Yeah, it was. I think it was his chance at a more sincere type movie. And he's like, oh, a man who keeps de-aging. Yeah, we like that. And it just didn't work.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because I think Coppola still could. Who knows? I think he could still make a good movie. He's tried before. He was brought on to co-produce the movie Supernova, which is so bad it actually has an Alan Smithy credit. Coppola wouldn't put his name on it. There's actually 3 other directors who have been a part of that movie, and they decided not to put their names on it because it was just terrible. But, you know, I don't know. I hate to say that he's lost it because it's Francis Ford Coppola. It's the director of The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, and those movies are awesome. You know?
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking of when doing that movie. It was like, I understand it, but I don't at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, you know. Here's another thing. I'm gonna kind of tweak the topic a little bit. We talked about directors and taking breaks and stuff. It's actually happened a lot more than people think. Like, the first one that pops into my mind is John Carpenter. John Carpenter, you know, I mean, it's John Carpenter. He's synonymous with great movies from the 80s, you know, The Thing and Escape from New York, They Live, Halloween. I mean, the guy's just had hit after hit. By the time the 90s came about, he was doing stuff like The Village of the Damned remake and Escape from L.A., which I like Escape from L.A., but I admit it's not a perfect film, and Vampires. And basically after Ghost of Mars was kind of a disappointment, he basically took a decade-long break, and he's only come back for like one direct-to-DVD movie, which I've heard is terrible, and you really don't hear much about him. You know, he's a director who knew he didn't have it in him and basically stepped out of the limelight, you know?
Yeah, I don't know, it's one of those situations where he was kind of jilted, he felt jilted by the system.
Yeah, he's for those of you that don't know about the history of John Carpenter, he's had to deal with studio interference for years.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, there was a period in the mid-'80s where he actually signed with an independent studio. I mean, that's where They Live came from. That was an independent studio thing, and he learned that even in the independent scene, you've got a lot of problems to deal with, mostly through budgetary issues. That's why he came back to Warner Brothers, I believe, in the 90s for The Invisible Man, Memoirs of an Invisible Man, and then obviously Escape from L.A. and all those other movies.
Yeah, it's how can I say? It's one of those situations where he didn't...
He wasn't allowed to be John Carpenter anymore?
Yeah, in a sense.
That's unfortunate because I've always been a John Carpenter fan. The Thing is one of my all-time favorite movies. And I will say this, I'd love to see him come back, and I know the perfect franchise for it. Because he's been pitching for it. He's been saying he wants to do a Dead Space movie.
Ooh, I would love to see that.
Old school Carpenter doing a Dead Space movie, I really would love to see that. And I think John Carpenter would be the right man, but he's got to be John Carpenter. You got to basically just let the guy do his thing. And I think if you could do that, I think you could have a hit there. And I would watch a Dead Space movie directed by John Carpenter.
I would too.
Yeah. But there's other examples of that too. I mean, another one that I think of is John Landis. John Landis was a huge comedy director in the 70s and 80s. I mean, he directed Kentucky Fried Movie. He directed The Blues Brothers. He directed both of the big Eddie Murphy hits, Coming to America and Trading Places. He directed also American Werewolf in London. I mean, this guy was a great director, and then the 90s come around, and he's directing Oscar with Sylvester Stallone, which was a disappointment. Beverly Hills Cop 3, which was a disaster. The Stupids with Tom Arnold, which, God almighty, that's terrible.
Why did he even do that?
And basically after 1998, he took a break from Hollywood. I think he took like a 12-year hiatus and only came back recently with, and I'm going to have to ask you about this because I've never heard of this movie. It was a UK release only. He directed a movie called Burke and Hare with Simon Pegg.
Yes, he did.
I haven't seen it. It's a Simon Pegg movie, so I can't really say if it's good or not.
Apparently, he had a lot of fun doing it. It went straight to DVD.
Ah, okay. Have you heard anything good about it?
I haven't heard anything about it, to tell you the truth. It's one of those where the actors said how much fun they had playing the characters. That's it. You know, it's kind of, yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things. In terms of Pegg, I think Pegg had fun doing it. But in terms of people who viewed it, I haven't heard anything to clarify if it's been good or not. I haven't been actively going out to watch it.
It kind of sounds like it's based off of a franchise. Like, is that an actual franchise that it's based off of? Is it an adaptation? It's
a film that was. I don't know if Pegg actually wrote it. You know.
Yeah. It's weird because, like I said, I mean, Landis did so many great movies early on, and he's got a kind of satirical style to him. You know, especially if you've seen stuff like The Blues Brothers, obviously Kentucky Fried Movie. You know, he knows how to do biting humor, and I think in this day and age when we've got some of the directors we've got, I think a guy like John Landis is necessary. I think give him the right writer. I think I'd love to see a John Landis movie come out today. You know, like I said, I haven't heard anything about Burke and Hare, so I don't know if it.
Well, there's certain sites you can go to find out more. I'm not going to say anything about those sites. But if you're very creative and you know what I'm talking about.
We here at Retro Unlimited do not condone torrenting or stealing of movies.
No, we don't. But I'm just saying, if you know how to get a hold of this movie and you're not from the UK, you can get a hold of it very easily. And I'm not going to say much about it because in the end, Simon Pegg loved what he did with the movie, but I haven't gone out of my way to see it.
You know what franchise I'd love to see Simon Pegg get a hold of and maybe direct or something?
What's that?
He actually was in the movie that I'm talking about, and I was so disappointed when I saw this movie. I'd love to see him take on Hitchhiker's Guide. I thought the American adaptation was awful, at least compared to the source material, because I love Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and whatever that director did, I mean, I think he was a little bit too on the nose for some of the jokes. I think a guy like Simon Pegg with his type of humor, or even Edgar Wright. I mean, we talked about Edgar Wright with Ant-Man. He directed Shaun of the Dead and some of the other Simon Pegg movies.
Well, didn't he do Scott Pilgrim?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
I have it on Blu-ray. I've tried to watch it. I got to go in with the right mindset because I hate Michael Cera so much. I just kind of, every time I try to go into it, I'm kind of just like,
he is
destroy,
very one-dimensional. Yeah.
Die! But I just kind of got to go into it with a better mindset because I do see why people like it. Like, I've seen trailers of it. I've seen the first 15 minutes.
It mirrors the comic book rather well.
Yeah, I get it. But like I said, I'd love to see Simon Pegg and maybe Edgar Wright's take on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because I think that's a great book, and I think the American adaptation was just, like I said, it was way too on the nose. It didn't have any of the subtlety that the books had. Have you seen that version, by the way?
What's that?
The American adaptation of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yes. I didn't mind it too much. I liked Mos Def.
No, I think the problem is that it lost a lot of the subtlety. You know, it just, like, too many of the gags were on the nose and just kind of as is. I don't think people got why some of the jokes were supposed to be funny. It needed a British director at the helm, and I think they got an American director to do it, and American actors, and it just didn't work. I think you really need somebody who has an eye for that kind of humor, and Pegg does. I mean, if you've seen stuff like Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, he definitely has that kind of
yeah, but Pegg wasn't the guy who was behind it. You know, he's not the he's not the guy. He hasn't directed many American movies.
Did he just star in, or did he have a hand in creation of The World's End? Because I've heard a lot of good things about that movie. He
just starred in it. It was Edgar Wright that actually directed that.
Well, then, like I said, we need to get Edgar Wright to do that Hitchhiker's movie then, because
no, because you were saying about Pegg, and I was like, no, not Pegg.
Because, I mean, in an era where they're adapting, like, every book known to man, seemingly, I think they need to take another stab at it, and I think it could do a huge bit of good.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But we're completely off topic. Let's go back and let's talk about another director who kind of fell off the face of the earth as well, and this is going to slot into directors that have kind of been ignored from Hollywood. You know, we talked about bad directors getting all these roles. You see a lot of good directors that are just ignored, and the first one I'm going to talk about is Joe Dante. Joe Dante is famous for movies like Gremlins and Inner Space, and one of my favorite Tom Hanks movies of all time, The Burbs. I love that movie.
I love Inner Space.
Yeah, he's made all those movies, and in the 90s, he was okay.
What was the way he said, "This is Walter," was it? This is Walter. Oh! Because he was holding the bone in his hand. Awesome movie.
Wasn't there a scene? I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but wasn't there a scene where the main character is standing behind the eye? I think Martin Short. Was it Dennis Quaid that was the guy that was inside Martin Short?
Yes. That was a good movie. Inner Space. That's actually one of my favorite movies of all time growing up.
Well, there's a scene. I remember there's a scene where he has this like hook that he has to hook into the back of Martin Short's eye so he can see what he's seeing, and he's like, "Brace yourself. This is gonna hurt a lot." And then all of a sudden you just see Martin Short just running around screaming, clasping onto his eye. I kind of remember that bit, but like I said, this is a guy that did Gremlins. He did Explorers, Inner Space, The Burbs, and in the 90s he did Small Soldiers, which was kind of a hit. It wasn't a massive hit. I like the movie. I think a lot of I think it could have been better, but I do think it's a pretty solid, popcorn film. And he did the Looney Tunes movie, Looney Tunes Back in Action, which was a bit of a flop, but I think unfortunately that was due to people tying it in with the previous Looney Tunes movie, which was Space Jam, which...
Yeah, but it was like Brendan Fraser kind of slipped through the cracks in terms of his acting ability. Everything after The Mummy kind of went downhill.
I'll agree with that, and that's unfortunate because I am a fan of Brendan Fraser, but after Looney Tunes Back in Action kind of bombed in the theaters, he's pretty much been kind of almost shunned by the Hollywood scene. He directed a movie called The Hole, which was filmed in 3D. He directed it in, I believe, 2008, and it took 4 years for the movie to get an official release in theaters, and it was only in New York and L.A. The movie went direct to DVD after that. I mean, the guy...
Yeah, I think it's because it was trying to take advantage of the whole 3D thing,
Yeah, but I haven't heard... It's sitting at an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not a bad movie. It's kind of... from what I'm reading right now, it's more of a throwback to, like, his older works. But you've got a guy like Joe Dante who hasn't lost it, and yet seemingly Hollywood doesn't care. And I don't understand that. I mean, this is the guy who back and do modern movies. You can have him do horror films. You know, you can have him do comedies. He's proven he can do that, and yet Hollywood just says, no, we're not interested. I mean, like I said, it took this movie 4 years to get a theatrical release from when it was made. I mean, that's ridiculous. Because he couldn't find a distributor, basically. He made it, and no one wanted to release it.
Yeah. I think it's with Hollywood, you know how they are. They kind of, if you want to do something, it's depending on how much money you make the studio. And usually they go to franchises and stuff for it. You know, it's kind of sad that way. It's like the kind of Marvel. A lot of it has to be said from like the Marvel franchises that we talked about, and the Men in Black and stuff like that. Studios are now going more and more into rehashing and trying to go into this sort of stance. So if a director doesn't make much money, they'll move on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because that brings me to another director who I think has been ignored, and I love the movie he made. He's only made one movie, but it's a phenomenal movie, and that's Cary Conrad, who directed, like I said, one of my favorite movies, which is Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. Have you seen that movie?
I think so. I think it's been ages ago.
Yeah, it was released in 2004. This was actually famous for being one of the first movies to do that whole green screen sepia filming. Before Sin City and 300 did it, this movie pretty much set the stage for it and showed that you can do a movie like that. And I think it's phenomenal. It's a throwback to like the old 1930s Pulp Fiction kind of vibe. It's starring Ewan McGregor, what's her name from Iron Man, Gwyneth Paltrow. It's got Angelina Jolie in it. It's a great movie. It's really fun, and Hollywood just has not worked with him since. Mostly because Sky Captain bombed, but I give the guy credit. He made the movie basically by himself. I mean, I've read the history of this movie. He basically made all the production was done by himself for the most part. He shopped the movie around and somehow got in touch with an Italian film producer who gave him enough money to do the big special effects, and after a while, I think it was either Paramount or Universal, they distributed it for him, and no, Paramount. It was Paramount that distributed it. Didn't make much money in the theaters, but, you know, the movie has such an imagination to it and is so well made. You've got to take a risk on a guy like that, and I'm surprised that Hollywood really hasn't called this guy back. I mean, just for the gumption of making this movie pretty much on his own. It took him like 5 years to get to do it because he started in 1999, I believe.
Yeah, I think in terms of most, you got to look at it from this point of view. No matter what you tend to do as a director, I don't know. His stuff was seen as promising, but it wasn't at the same time. It wasn't anything that you were like, you know, put your I don't know how to say it.
Not everybody is worthy of a shot. You're basically trying to say some people just kind of slip through the cracks in that.
Kind of. It's like Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow wasn't amazing.
I thought it was really good and very, folks, if you haven't seen the movie, it's very underrated. It's on Netflix, so if you want to pull it up, it's there. But yeah, join us in on the chat, folks. We've got 15 more minutes left, so we're going to be wrapping things up soon. I don't know if we're going to be going into the overtime. 718-664-9265. We've still got the chat open. If you guys want to call in or get your voice heard, we got those options right there. Let's go into two directors that I think are starting to get better, or at least in my opinion have gotten a bum rap from directing. And we talked about him earlier. I'm going to say it right now. I'm not a Michael Bay hater. I used to be, but that was very much a bandwagon-y kind of thing. When Transformers came out, there was all that hate about, oh, Michael Bay, he's a one-note director, he's all explosions and everything, but I've gone back and watched a lot of his movies, a lot of his earlier works especially, he's not a bad director. I mean, Bad Boys is still a great movie. I think The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery, I think, is a fine movie. I think that's a really good movie. I think The Island, which I didn't even know was him until I went back and checked it out with Scarlett Johansson and Ewan McGregor, that's actually a pretty good movie. I think he gets lumped into it because Pain and Gain. I mean, I love Pain and Gain. That's my all-time favorite movie of this past year. But I think too many people lump him in because of Armageddon and Pearl Harbor and obviously the Transformers movies. He's kind of gotten this reputation as just being a one-note director, and I don't think that's fair to him. I think given the right material, he can make some solid movies.
Yeah, in a sense, like, after watching Pain Again, I agree. Still not happy with the majority of his work. He fucked the Transformers movie up. Shia LaBeouf's character in there was totally nonsensical and ridiculous, you know? It was one of those things like Bad Boy, he did an amazing job with, you know?
That's a fun, old-school 90s action movie.
Yeah, but it was exactly what the 90s was about.
Yeah.
Explosive content.
Buddy cop movies.
Exactly.
And even Bad Boys 2 I don't think is bad. My biggest issue with it is way too long. It's like it's almost like 2.5 hours. I can't sit there and watch a 2.5 hour action movie. I'm sorry. It's one of the reasons why I had a problem with the latter Transformers movies. Because I actually didn't mind the first one. The first one I think is okay. It's not terrible, but it's not good. The second one I think is where a lot of people's hatred really boiled over, including mine. I thought the second one was a disaster. And I'm not going to blame it on the writer's strike, which I know Bay even admits was kind of the reason why that movie was such a mess. No, you knew what you were getting into with that movie, and you kept going.
Yeah, with the Bad Boys movies particularly, it took you on a ride, and it knew what it was doing in that sense, you know. But when he started moving on from that, like. What was that? Speaking of Affleck, Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I think he was trying to do like his version of Titanic. Titanic was a big special effects movie with a love story and whatnot, and I think Bay was kind of trying to do his own version of that, and he at that point did not have the chops for it. That movie was that movie was not very good. I can't say it was terrible because I can't debate whether or not I hated that or Armageddon worse. I think Armageddon is it's kind of teetering on that so bad it's good. I mean, it's so over the top with everything it does. You can almost kind of watch it in a tongue-in-cheek kind of vibe. You know, there's just so many over the top scenes. Like there's that scene at the end where, spoiler alert, Ben Affleck is about to sacrifice his life on this asteroid, and then he's like, "Tell Liv Tyler I love her." He's like, "No, I'm not going to tell her." And then Bruce Willis kicks Ben Affleck back into the elevator. He's like, "You will." And then as he's leaving, he's like, "No, don't do it. I love you, Bruce Willis." And it's just so over the top. You could kind of like see.
I don't want to miss a thing.
Hey, that song is awesome. You shut your mouth.
That's fucking creepy. When he's got himself on the fucking screen, his daughter's touching the fucking screen.
That I'm sorry. I have a thing for cheesy music. I think that's why I like the movie, because the soundtrack is so over the top. You know what? That might be it. But Pearl Harbor was not a good movie. Armageddon, I get why people hate it. The Transformers movies speak for themselves, but I'm going to stand by Michael Bay. I think his biggest problem is he needs to distance himself more from the Transformers movies. And I know that's kind of career suicide, considering how big those movies are, but he needs to do more movies outside of his wheelhouse. And I think Pain and Gain was a great start. That movie's really well made. It's got a great cast. And it's very much almost an atypical Michael Bay film on the surface, but the more you watch it, the more you realize, yeah, this is a Michael Bay film, but it hits all the right notes.
Yeah. It's one of those where it has story, it has structure, and it has character, kind of like his Bad Boy movies. You know, they had those stories and structures and characters, and it built. With films like Pearl Harbor and what was the other one, Armageddon, they didn't have much of a story and structure. It kind of had him. It was going off the wall and stuff, and the characters were they were very, very cheesy at the same time, and it just didn't work the way it should have done.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna segue into our last topic because we've got about 10 minutes left into the main broadcast, folks. If last chance you want to get in on this, 718-664-9265. Just throwing it out there. But we're gonna kind of start wrapping things up by talking about bad directors that have just gotten worse. Just guys that for some reason the studios keep throwing money at these guys and they just have no real redeeming qualities for them. And the one guy that I'm going to pull out is a guy I've had issues with, and that's Dennis Duggan. Dennis Duggan, for those of you who don't know, he started off as an actor in the 80s. He won Emmys for Hill Street Blues. He was in The Howling. He's done a bunch of other stuff, but his first big movie release was Adam Sandler's Happy Gilmore. And since then, he's basically been Adam Sandler's right-hand man. He's directed a lot of the Happy Madison movies. He directed I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, Don't Mess with the Zohan, Just Go With It, Jack and Jill, That's My Boy, the Grown Ups movies. I mean, and aside from the Grown Ups movies, all these other movies have just been terrible. They've done terrible box office, and yet this guy keeps finding work. Maybe it's just the fact that Adam Sandler's tied to him, and that's what's keeping him afloat, but how does a guy like that keep getting work in Hollywood?
Adam Sandler. That's why.
You think it's literally because of the ties with Adam Sandler?
Yep.
It's unfortunate, man. That's what nepotism will get to you. I don't think I'm using nepotism right, but screw it, I'm going to use it. I mean, it's unfortunate, man, because, God, you'd think that after Just Go With It, Jack and Jill, and That's My Boy bombed, the studios would just wash their hands of him, but nope, Grown Ups made a ton of money, and we're going to be seeing more and more from this hack. I mean, that goes back to the director thing, and I want to ask you about that. If you're a director, you're making movies that are just critically, just one after another, panned, yet they're still making money. As a director, do you keep going? Do you just keep cranking these movies out because, hey, I'm getting money, and that's all that matters?
The way I see it is, if I had enough money to quit, I would. The one thing I've always said to myself, and these are my goals as an actor and as also the director, is to create stuff that it's worth notably to everybody out there and critically praised. I want to create something that will make me remembered as for my creativeness and for the stuff that I produce. And if I can't do that anymore, if it keeps getting panned and I can't fix it, then it's time to give up.
I can agree with that. I mean, I've heard so many people say that it goes back to it becomes a job at that point, and I think when it comes to film and cinema, it should be more than a job. I mean, there is still an art form to it. You know, you can't just treat it like you do Walmart. You know, you can't just go into it like, I'm just going to go out and make money, and I don't care what I do. I don't care if I'm, you know, a Brian Robbins, for example, who has been doing stuff like 1,000 Words and Meet Dave and Norbit. And all
Retro on Limb just said, Stephen from Retro on Limb just said that Norbit is one of the worst movies alive.
Yeah, and like I said, that's Brian Robbins. He directed Norbit, Meet Dave, 1,000 Words. He started off directing Varsity Blues and Ready to Rumble and Good Burger.
Ready to Rumble, another shitty movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you and I know about Ready to Rumble.
We're not gonna take it. No, we're not gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore.
But yeah, that's unfortunate. And we've got about 7 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to start wrapping things up. I'm gonna talk about one more director, and then we might end up slipping into the after show a little bit, a couple minutes, folks, but we're going to try to be a little bit more concise with this. I'm trying to hit it more so that we are able to do more of our show for the live audience, more than just kind of relying on the after show. So I'm trying to keep it a little bit more concise and on point. So we might slip into the after show, so we'll get those plugs in at that point, but we're going to talk about one last should be ashamed of themselves. And I think when I first mentioned this, the first name that popped into people's minds, Friedberg and Seltzer. I mean, disaster movie, date movie, epic movie, Meet the Spartans.
Those, they piss me off.
These guys have ruined parody. I mean, it makes me pine for the days of Mel Brooks, and even the lesser critically praised Mel Brooks movies, like Dracula Dead and Loving It and Men in Tights, which I love both of those movies, but those are usually the ones that...
We're Men in Tights. Yes.
Yes!
Yeah.
You gotta say it like that.
It's awesome.
I love that movie, and I love Dracula Dead and Loving It, but anytime you talk about Mel Brooks, those are usually considered as the lesser of the two, and, you know, I love those movies. I actually saw those before I saw Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs, and I love those two movies, but Men in Tights and Dracula have a special place in my heart. But going back to Friedberg and Seltzer, they've completely destroyed parody. I mean, they've ruined it. You know, their parody has no bite. There's no satire. It's not even parody so much as it's reference humor. It's jokeless. You know, they throw things out there because it's funny, and people still go to see these people, these directors. You know, their movies still, well, I hate to say that because they're starting to actually lose a lot of steam. Their last two movies, The Starving Games and Best Night Ever, have been straight to video. They haven't gotten theatrical releases, so hopefully this is the end of their run. But man, I mean, it's out there already. You know, date movie, disaster movie, epic movie.
Spy Hard. Ugh.
Spy Hard, actually, here's the thing. Spy Hard, they actually did not do much onto it. I think the director is related to one of them, so it was basically they were brought in just to do some flowering up of the script. So they didn't really write it or anything like that. They just have a credit because nepotism.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, these movies I always have an issue with these.
Yeah, I mean, I have an issue with them too. They're terrible.
Yeah.
They're just not good. I mean, I could see where they're coming from. I've been trying to write kind of satire and parody for this job for hire. It's not that easy. You really got to think about it, but I don't just throw out references without a joke. That's the thing. You can't just throw out references to other movies without a point. And their humor is so pointless. You know, it's really, it's bottom of the barrel toilet humor. You know,
yeah.
When you
it's the type of humor where you know you're doing something fucking wrong.
Yeah.
And they had, after the whole freaking Scary Movie thing, they kept going and going. And I agree with Retro Unlim here. Loaded Weapon 1 was awesome. I don't know what the fuck they were doing with these.
Loaded Weapon was the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams.
I loved it.
Yeah, Loaded Weapon 1, Top...
That was a great parody movie, but there was a lot of these movies where they just went overboard. Everyone was doing a fucking shitty movie, and a lot of it happened to be just going on and on and on and on with all this shit fest.
Well, folks, that sound means that we're going to be slipping into our overtime segment. We're going to finish up our topic on bad directors. We're going to be finishing up our discussion on Friedberg and Seltzer, and then we're going to be going into our plugs. So thanks for listening to our live show. You can catch us every Thursday night at 8 on the Retro Unlimited Network on blogtalkradio.com. So for Michael Burhan and myself, we'll catch you guys live next week, and stay tuned for the after show, where we're going to continue our discussion, and make sure to archive us. Make sure to do we have download options?
Yes, we do.
Well, make sure
you can also download it from iTunes, and you can listen to it on Stitcher.
All right, so we're going to continue our conversation with this. Like I was saying before, Loaded Weapon was actually the Zucker brothers. They did Airplane and Top Secret and a bunch of other stuff. That's actually another topic we can go into, the death of parody, but I'm not going to go too far into that. But let's see, what else can I talk about? What other stuff? I had a bunch of other directors on here. you mentioned a specific director that I'm going to defend on this one, and that's Uwe Boll. I'm going to be honest. I don't think he's a great director, but I think he's getting better, and that's just my opinion. You look back on a lot of those earlier works of his, House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, and things like that, and they're that special kind of terrible we talked about, where it's just level 5, 5% out of 100. I think right now Alone in the Dark is sitting at a 0 out of 100. But
yeah, ugh.
But his movies as of late, the non-video game ones, like Rampage and Assault on Wall Street and Tunnel Rats, I'll be honest, I've heard some good things about them. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're terrible. But it seems like he's starting to understand the language of film, because I recently listened to an interview that he did for a show called Radiodrome. You really do get the sense from it that those earlier works, he was really trying to find the language of film, that they were very much practice movies. Now, how those movies got theatrical releases, I'll never understand, but I think now that he's really been in the business for over a decade, he's starting to get a little bit better, because like I said, Assault on Wall Street right now is sitting at a 25 on Rotten Tomatoes, so it probably still is bad, but it's actually at least a movie.
Yeah. I don't know, with him, it's like he did it because he could get discounts from doing it.
Yeah, we also have to point out those earlier movies were done mainly through German tax law code, which was that if your film bombs and you're a movie director in Germany, they'll give you your money back, no matter how bad the movie bombed. So he was able to write off all of those movies.
Not just that, he got distribution rights for them as well. So Universal were fucking distributing the shit out of his crap.
Yeah. I'll say this, though, and I have a very funny story about that. I have a soft spot in my heart for Alone in the Dark. That was actually the first movie I tried to take somebody out on a date to. Because at the time I was really into Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, so I had my next door neighbor, and I was just like, I'm going to go see this movie, and you want to come with me? Unfortunately, I was like 16, so I didn't realize it was an R-rated movie, so I ended up having to take one of my cousins with me who was old enough to get us a ticket, so that kind of ruined it, but I always thought it was kind of funny. I have a soft spot in my heart for Alone in the Dark. Actually, kind of, what's funny is...
Again, it was like it had so much potential, and I had Christian Slater, and I so wanted it to be good. I'm a fan of Christian Slater, believe it or not. I know there's not many of those, but I am.
I've said it before when I first saw it. You look at the lineup. It's Christian Slater, Tara Reid, and Stephen Dorff. I'm kind of sitting there thinking, all right, where's the rapper in this whole setup? Like, this would be complete if it had, like, some, like, 90s era rapper as, like, a co-star or something. Like, I'm waiting for Coolio to pop up at one point.
Yeah, it was like one of those things where I saw it and I watched it and I was like, I want this to be good. I want it to be good. Alone in the Dark. It's got to be great, and it turns out it was a pile of shit. Honestly,
compared to House of the Dead, I thought House of the Dead was worse.
God.
Alone in the Dark, to me, was just boring. It was amateurish, but B-movie in the worst possible way. Alone in the Dark House of the Dead insulted me more. I think it was just, you could tell how amateurish that movie was, especially during a lot of the zombie fight scenes where they would pull up footage from the actual game itself. I mean, that was just embarrassing.
Yeah.
But like I said, as his movies have gotten over the years, it seems like he's getting a little bit better. I wish he would stop using video game properties. Right now he's in the process of making Postal 2, which he's outright said he's going to make the most tasteless, politically incorrect movie, most offensive movie in the world. And
did he beat up one of his critics?
He challenged,
in the ring?
I think he did, like a few internet critics who called him out on his challenge. Yeah, he challenges people to fights because he's a boxer.
He's a fucking psychopath.
Yeah.
Because I know he did one where he called out Michael Bay and called him a prick. He's a better director than Bay is, and I laughed.
Look,
Bay, to Bay's discredit, he is a fucking better director than Uwe Boll.
Yeah, I'd rather watch I'd rather watch Pearl Harbor and Armageddon back to back. No, Pearl Harbor and Transformers 2 back to back than an Uwe Boll movie.
Me too. It's a shame because he's such a shitty director.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, I actually do want to see Assault on Wall Street. I want to give it a chance because from what I've heard, it's very atypical. It's not a B-movie action movie. It's got a lot of character development into it. You know, it's got Dominic Purcell, which I think is a better actor than his roles deserve. You've got Eric Roberts in it as well. It's topical, you know, the whole Wall Street thing. So I don't know. I might give it credit.
I don't. I really don't. It was one of those. Every time I see a new Boll film, I want to slap myself in the head with my own penis. Because it's nonsensical. It doesn't live up to the stories and the properties that he uses. He kind of just sours my taste in anything that the guy does.
Yeah, Alone in the Dark could have been so much more than it was.
Yeah.
House of the Dead, I don't know, because that movie, I almost want to give House of the Dead a pass because the original House of the Dead is so knowingly awful. You kind of are like, okay, what did you expect? It goes back to when Paul W.S. Anderson did his adaptation of Dead or Alive. You know, Spoonie said it best. It's a movie about scantily clad women, you know, in exotic locales fighting. What more do you expect from it? You know, you can only do so much with the license, and I almost want to give House of the Dead a pass, even though I think it's a worse movie than Alone in the Dark.
It is a worse movie than Alone in the Dark, and it doesn't live up to the House of the Dead license.
That's unfortunate. I will say, though, Blood Rain, I think we can all agree, is just a disappointment.
Oh, my... You know what? If she took her kit off, I wouldn't have minded too much. I really wouldn't have.
You know what's funny? Spoonie did a review of the third one, and he made that exact point. He's like, you know, if this movie just went all out and just had nothing but just the main character just fighting topless or anything like that, this might be a good movie. Because that's what he said. It's the third one, the Third Reich. It's not a good movie, but it could have used some Uwe Bolling, you know, just over the topness that Uwe Boll does, and it might have made the movie watchable for him.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that Blood Rain, I wanted to see her naked. I wanted to see her...
Kristanna Loken?
Yep. I wanted to see her in a situation where I could, masturbate to her, basically, and I couldn't even do that. So, if you've got a bad movie, at least have some skin. Just saying.
You want to know the funny thing about it is I was doing research on like writers and directors and things like that, and I was researching it, and the actual writer of the Blood Rain movie is actually a lot better than she gives any credit of. For those of you who don't know, the writer of Blood Rain was a woman by the name of Guinevere Turner, who is credited as the writer for the American Psycho adaptation. She wrote that. But what happened was she was contacted to write Blood Rain. So she basically, in her words, she wrote a first draft. Basically just a concept document almost. Like, here, this is the ideas I have. This is basically a very rough first draft. And never heard anything back from Uwe Boll. And so when she was contacted for the premiere of the movie, she went to the premiere to see it and realized that they basically used her first draft word for word.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. For those of you who have not written for film, you never use the first draft as your main script. You go through at least,
terrible.
Yeah, you go through, you know that it's terrible. That's why you go through 4 or 5 drafts of your script before you get to the shooting script. And she said she was horrified because she said if she knew that they liked her script and they were going to use it, she would have written 3 or 4 versions of it. You don't shoot with the first draft. I mean, it kind of tells you how Uwe Boll has kind of evolved as a director in a way, because I don't know if he does that anymore, but that's amateurish right there.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that he's actually using her script without talking to her, that is a no-no.
Well, no, it wasn't illegal. She was signed on to write it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You've got to consult your scriptwriter first and say, I like this, I don't like this. You know, I want to do this, I don't want to do this. Instead, he just went, didn't contact her and just threw the fucking script out in the first place. I'd find that insulting.
Yeah, and like I said, this is the same woman that wrote American Psycho, which I think is a great movie. I think it's an underrated... Well, I can't say it's an underrated film, but you don't really hear many people talking about it.
Yeah, same. It's... as I said, with him, I think he was one of these fanboys that wanted to be a director and decided, I've got enough money to do that, so I'm going to finance it, get my money back if it fucks up, and find a distributor, and he did. Credit to him, he's actually one of the worst directors that actually makes money.
Yeah, definitely. I completely... You know what? You won me over. I was going to give him credit, but no, doesn't deserve it.
He doesn't deserve it. Why would you give someone credit who continuously throws out all these properties, invests his own money in something that he knows he's not going to make a loss on? If that was me and I was making no losses on films, I make losses on good stuff that I make, right? And yeah. I basically make huge losses on stuff that I produce. If I was in Uwe Boll's shoes, I'd be faking my lucky stars that I work in the fucking film industry. He's a bully, he's an asshole, and he's someone that just you really want to punch in the fucking face because he has no fucking talent. And at Uwe Boll, if you want to fight me, I'm in the United Kingdom. What we say is, you pay me like, I don't know, 10 grand, get me in the ring, and you can beat the fucking shit out of me. I still end up with 10 grand of your fucking money.
Put that towards our Silent Hill TV series.
Exactly. So in the end of the day, Uwe Boll, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to be man enough to come out and say how shit you are and that you should learn a fucking lesson. If I was you, I would learn a filmmaking class from Michael Bay. I would go to Michael Bay and beg him, kiss his fucking feet to show you how to make a good fucking movie, because you are a talentless hack who has abused every single video game property I've ever seen in my fucking life.
Sounds like somebody needs to do an Uwe Boll retrospective on Movie File sometime.
I do, and I've gone over his movies as well, and I got gameplay when we did a video game movie tie-in.
Yeah, I'm seeing House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, and Blood Rain. I think that's a great little trilogy to do a retrospective on. You've heard it here first, folks. Uwe Boll, we coming for you, nigga.
Exactly.
So on that note, we're going to start wrapping things up. We've been talking about bad directors, but I do think we should take a moment to acknowledge good directors. And Burhan, who's a good director that you think people should look out for? You know, I've always said we're starting to reach the point where we're running out of rock star directors, you know, guys that can sell a movie based on their name as a director. Who do you think are some directors right now that you think are the new breed of rock star directors?
I'd never consider anyone a rock star director, because I don't believe any director should be weighed upon the films that they make. I think the film should be judged solely upon their stories. But saying that, I recently watched a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio called The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, can you name me the director who directed that?
Martin Scorsese.
Exactly. Scorsese is one of those guys who has never done a bad film.
Yeah, that actually, you bring up a good point, and I forgot to bring that up. He's one of those, there are directors who are still doing it, and Scorsese is a perfect example. He was directing stuff like, I believe he directed, let me see. I may have given Coppola credit for directing Taxi Driver or something like that, but he might have produced it. I think Scorsese was the one that did Taxi Driver. Scorsese did Taxi Driver. He did Goodfellas, Casino. He started in the 70s, and to this day is still just cranking out hit after hit after hit. In fact, one movie that I've actually been looking at trailers for that I'm dying to see is Bringing Out the Dead, his Nicolas Cage movie with Nick Cage, Tom Sizemore. It looks really good, and I actually want to see what that movie's about. Yeah,
same. Another one is Spike Jonze, director of Being John Malkovich.
I wanted to...
He's a very avant-garde director. I will point this out. He is very avant-garde.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, he directed Adaptation with Nicolas Cage. He directed the adaptation of Where the Wild Things Are, and his most recent film is Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix. And honestly, after seeing the trailer for Her, I really want to hate that movie, but I feel like if I watch it, I'm going to love it. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I've heard it's incredibly well made. You know, I mean, he's an indie darling, and I do think he is kind of starting to really seep up into the mainstream. He's got a movie coming out in 2015 called Tomorrowland, which sounds interesting. My only gripe with it, it's being written by Damon Lindelof, and I don't like him as a writer. Lindelof is the same guy that writes Lost. He wrote Prometheus. He's one of those writers. He's kind of the Vince Russo of writing. He's a writer that brings up a lot of great ideas, but never has a payoff for them at all. And I can't stand writers like that. I think a good writer knows how to keep mystery, but at the same time knows how to give a satisfying conclusion. And we'll see if Spike Jonze has enough in him to kind of keep Lindelof in check. You know, because Lindelof has been a part of other projects. You know, he helped write the first Star Trek movie with J.J. Abrams.
Yes.
And that movie was pretty solid, so who knows. And speaking of J.J. Abrams, I'm actually going to go with him as one of my directors to watch out for. I think he's really kind of become one of the big directors right now that can sell a movie based on his name. I mean, the Star Trek movies, the Lost series, and obviously now he's directing Star Wars Episode 7, which we'll see. So I think he's becoming a big name for himself. And another one I'm going to name, and I think hopefully this whole situation with Superman and Batman mulls over, but Ben Affleck. I think he's really starting to break out and kind of break from that whole...
I agree with you. I think as an actor, he's doing a hell of a lot better.
Not just as an actor, as a director mostly.
No, but as a director, he's excelling.
Yeah.
He's doing more than what he can do, you know.
Yeah, there's always going to be bad directors out there. You're always going to have your hacks, your hired guns. You know, there are just guys that are out there just to make product. But, you know, it's always the old saying I've always heard from is it's amazing how much good product is churned out of Hollywood compared to bad. But there is good product out there. There are guys out there who do care about making a good effort, and you just got to be smart about it and not give your money to the likes of the Freeberg and Seltzers of the world. You got to be smarter people about that.
Yeah, I agree. Darren Aronofsky is another one. He was going to do The Wolverine. He actually titled the movie, but ended up basically passing on it. It's a shame. I would love to have seen him have his hands on the X-Men movie.
Well, he at one point was going to direct Batman Begins also.
Yes.
He was going to direct, back when it was still Batman Year One, he was going to direct that, but he apparently was taking it into a completely different direction that Warner Brothers was not comfortable with. But yeah, he directed The Wrestler. He's a solid director, and I'd love to see more of his work.
I agree with you.
So I'm a little bit tired. My throat's kind of going out. We're going to start wrapping things up. Michael Burhan, where can they find you?
www.nerdgenius.com. And also www.enigma.co.uk. You can find me basically. I have a book called Dear John. It's on Amazon Kindle now. Check it, buy it, and also check me out on the Facebooks, Twitter, all loads of stuff like that, and also my YouTube channel, youtube.com/TheNerdGenius.
And you can check out my work, my written work, on www.fanboysanonymous.com. 90s Kid Presents is my blog. Enjoy it while it lasts, people. I've kind of been... I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of it. I've still got to finish my top 16 of the greatest games of the late 90s. After that, especially with the show I've got right now, I don't know. I've got to talk to Tony about that. But check out my written work on there. Keep it tuned every Thursday night at 8 o'clock for the Untitled Movie Show. I don't know what next week's show is going to be. I'm going to mull that over with Burhan, so I can't really do a lead out in terms of what I want to do, but we'll see what we're going to plan out, and we'll have it up by the middle of next week, what our topic is going to be. So for all of us here on Retro Unlimited, on Blog Talk Radio, for Michael Burhan of the Nerd Genius, and for myself, I'm Miguel Leon. This has been the Untitled Movie Show, episode 3. Take us out, Jay.
voices are impersonated. No celebrities were harmed in filming of this episode.
Excuse me, sir. The show's over.
Get away, zit face.